From seventh round draft pick to an Olympic medalist, from being detained by the Russian army to finally stepping on NHL ice in Philadelphia, Ivan Fedotov's career has been one of the most dramatic sagas in modern hockey. And just today, his Flyers story came to a close as he was traded to the Columbus Blue Jackets for a sixth round pick. How'd we get here and what comes next for the 6'7" netminder? Buckle up because this is an incredible journey of Ivan Fedotov. Ivan Fedotov was born in Nizhny Kamsk, Russia in 1996, a city known more for its oil refineries than its hockey factories. Yet from the moment he strapped on goalie pads, it was clear that he wasn't a typical kid between the pipes. Towering above his peers even in his teenage years, Fedotov had the size NHL scouts drool over, but raw size alone doesn't make a goaltender. What set him apart was the way he moved. Despite standing 6'7", he was fluid, composed, and relied on positioning instead of pure athletic desperation. He cut his teeth in Russia's junior league in the MHL, playing for Reactor. Soon he graduated to the VHL and eventually the KHL. Every step along the way, Fedotov refined his game. Though he wasn't immediately dominant, he stuck with it, developing slowly but steadily. And by his early 20s, he carved out a reputation as a late bloomer goalie. The kind who might never make the NHL leap, but one who could dominate if given the right environment. That reputation would soon change as Philadelphia became calling in the 2015 NHL draft. The 2015 NHL draft in Sunrise, Florida was dominated by Connor McDavid going first overall, Jack Eichel second, and plenty of hype surrounding big-name prospects. For Flyers fans, the headliner was Ivan Provorov going 8th overall. But in the 7th round, with pick number 188, Philadelphia took a swing on a massive Russian goalie named Ivan Fedotov. At the time, this was the classic long-term project move. Most 7th rounders never touched the NHL, but Fedotov was intriguing. His frame was rare, his numbers in Russia were improving, and the goalie development is notoriously unpredictable. Why not stash him away and see if something clicks? For years, though, Fedotov's name barely registered in Philadelphia. Fans would occasionally see updates, a solid save percentage here, a strong stretch in the KHL there, but he wasn't in North America, and he wasn't making noise in Flyers circles. He was that Russian goalie, taken in a throwaway round. And then, out of nowhere, his stock exploded. The turning point came when Fedotov landed with CSKA Moscow, one of the KHL's most powerful clubs. Suddenly, he wasn't just another big body in net. He was putting up numbers. He was shutting down elite scorers, and he was stealing games. At 6'7", shooters struggled to find holes, and when they did, Fedotov's composure under pressure often closed the door. By 2021-22, he was a full-fledged starter in the KHL, leading CSKA to deep playoff runs. His rise culminated in the 2022 Beijing Olympics, where he backstopped the Russian Olympic Committee to a silver medal. On international ice, under the brightest spotlight, Fedotov delivered. He was named the tournament's top goaltender. For the Flyers, this was the green light. That 7th round pick they took nearly a decade earlier, he wasn't just a project anymore. He was a potential NHL difference maker. Philadelphia immediately moved to bring him over to North America. But just as Flyers fans began to dream of their 6'7" Russian netminder arriving in Philly, the story took a shocking twist. In May 2022, not long after he signed an entry-level deal with the Flyers, Fedotov was detained in St. Petersburg. The reason? Russian authorities claimed he had evaded mandatory military service. And in dramatic scenes reported across the hockey world, he was whisked away to a military base in the Arctic, far from rinks and arenas. The Flyers' prized prospect, fresh off Olympic glory, was suddenly wearing army fatigues instead of goalie pads. While CSKA Moscow, Fedotov's club at the time, is historically tied to the Russian army. Many speculated his NHL departure sparked the sudden enforcement. Regardless of the politics, the effect was clear. Fedotov's NHL dream was on ice. For the Flyers, it felt like deja vu. Another highly touted goalie stuck overseas. Fans feared they'd never see him in orange and black. For nearly 2 years, Fedotov's future was in limbo. But in 2024, the stalemate ended. CSKA Moscow released him, and the Flyers wasted no time. They signed him to a 2-year deal worth $6.55 million, banking on his KHL dominance translating to the NHL. It was a feel-good story, almost too good to be true. Flyers fans rallied around Fedotov. Social media buzzed with highlights from the KHL, reminding everyone of just how good this guy could be. The team presented him as a key part of the next phase in Philadelphia's rebuild. Finally, Ivan Fedotov was not just a Flyers draft pick. He was in Philadelphia, skating in camp, wearing the crest, and preparing to make his NHL debut. The saga of the Army draft was over, and the NHL journey was just beginning. But stepping into the NHL crease is another world. The angles are tighter, the shooters are faster, traffic in front of the net is relentless. And for Fedotov, the transition was rocky to say the least. His first games showed flashes of promise, but inconsistency plagued him. Some nights he looked calm and unbeatable, swallowing pucks with ease. Other nights he looked lost, beaten clean by shots he might have stopped in the KHL. His save percentage slipped, his goals against average climbed, and whispers began. Maybe the hype didn't match reality. Still, the Flyers had invested in him. They weren't ready to give up. Instead, they gave him an opportunity. And as we'll see in the next chapters here, the opportunity carried major consequences. Despite the growing pains, the Flyers doubled down in April 2024. They signed Fedotov to a 2-year, $6.55 million contract. Yeah, it was a gamble, one that showed the organization believed he could still be a long-term piece. The decision split the fan base. On one side, there were the optimists. Fedotov had the size you couldn't teach, a track record of success overseas, and he was adjusting to a new league after a whirlwind of off-ice drama. Give him time, they said. He'll figure it out. And on the other side were skeptics. Goaltending in the NHL isn't about just raw talent. It's about adapting to speed, reading plays, and handling the mental grind. And skeptics saw a goalie who looked shaky more often than steady. We've seen this before, they warned, pointing to European goalies who dominated abroad but never found footing in North America. For the Flyers, the contract wasn't just about Fedotov. It was about buying flexibility. If he blossomed into a starter, it would be a steal. And if he flamed out, the cap hit wasn't crippling. But the extension also meant expectations skyrocketed. No longer was Fedotov the mysterious Russian goalie. He was now a $3.275 million cap hit. Every soft goal, every blown rebound, every bad start would now be magnified. And as the 2024-25 season unfolded, the pressure only grew heavier. The 2024-25 campaign was supposed to be Fedotov's chance to cement himself in Philadelphia's crease. Instead, it became a season of frustration. The Flyers gave him opportunities, spot starts, stretches of games, even chances against weaker opponents where he was expected to shine. But his inconsistency persisted. Some nights he stood tall, using his massive frame to shut down shooting lanes, while other nights he was beaten cleanly, leaving fans groaning and teammates shaking their heads. His numbers told the story: a subpar save percentage, an inflated goals against average, and a win-loss record that didn't inspire confidence. And while the Flyers weren't world beaters defensively, the goaltending wasn't giving them the extra saves needed to steal games. Meanwhile, Philadelphia's goalie chart began to crowd. Young prospects knocking at the door, veterans steady enough to handle the load. Suddenly, Fedotov didn't look like a cornerstone. He looked like a question mark. Off the ice, the fan base began to sour. What was once excitement about the long-awaited Russian goaltender turned into frustration. Local podcasts hammered him. Social media debated whether he was worth the money. The late bloomer narrative started to morph into bust whispers. For the Flyers, the writing was clear. The decision had to be made. And that decision came today. In a move that shocked some and validated others, the Flyers traded Ivan Fedotov to the Columbus Blue Jackets in exchange for a 6th-round pick. On the surface, the return looks modest. A 6th-rounder for a goalie once hyped as a potential franchise saver. That stings, but dig deeper and the logic's clear. Flyers are ready to move on. They freed up cap space, opened a roster spot, and cut ties with a player who never quite fit. While for Columbus, the deal is the definition of a low-risk, high-reward. They gave up a 6th-round pick, one that has slim odds of producing an NHL player. In return, they get a goalie with an Olympic medal, KHL dominance, and the physical tools to succeed. If Fedotov figures it out, they've stolen a gem. If not, it's barely a dent. It's also worth noting the Blue Jackets situation. They're a team searching for stability, with young players in the lineup and questions in goal. A 6'7" netminder with something to prove, that's worth a flyer. No pun intended. For Fedotov, it's a fresh start. The pressure of Philadelphia with its unforgiving fan base and constant goalie drama is gone. Now he steps into Columbus, where expectations could be lower, but opportunity is real. This trade closes a chapter for Fedotov and opens another. At 28 years old, Ivan Fedotov isn't a prospect anymore. He's supposed to be in his prime. The next 2 years will define his career and maybe his legacy. In Columbus, he'll get a chance to reset. And the Blue Jackets' defensive system is different from Philadelphia's. Sometimes a change of scenery is all it takes. If Fedotov can adjust to a smaller NHL rink, track pucks better through traffic, and cut down on rebounds, he could absolutely carve out a role still. But it won't be easy. The NHL isn't forgiving. His leash won't be long, and the Blue Jackets won't hesitate to turn elsewhere if he falters. At the same time, you got to figure they'll give him a fair shake. With his pedigree, size, and the sheer fact that he's still a mystery in many ways, he'll get his chances. The bigger question is mental. After years of being caught between leagues, detained by the Army, and living under the microscope in Philadelphia, can Fedotov handle another challenge? Some players wilt under that weight, while others thrive. One thing's for sure, the story of Ivan Fedotov is far from finished. Today's trade marks the beginning of a new chapter, and whether he becomes a comeback story in Columbus or fades into hockey's what-if category, one thing's certain. His career has been one of the most fascinating in recent memory. If you enjoyed today's video, make sure to give us a like and subscribe. Help us on our quest for 2,000 subscribers. Leave a comment. Let us know what you think about this trade. In the meantime, don't forget to keep it high, keep it wide, and we'll see you next time on HW Hockey.